The CFTC is suing Binance. What is going on? What does this mean for crypto? How is this gonna turn out? All these things would love to discuss in today's video. Hey and welcome. My name is Julian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cake DeFi. On my channel, it's all about making you crypto fit. I discuss the beautiful world of decentralization, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and well, obviously also other investments. So before we go into this video, quick disclaimer. I am the CEO, co-founder of a different crypto platform, Cake DeFi. So I do have fiduciary duties to the board, to the shareholders, and so obviously take everything I say with a bit of a grain of salt. I want to be very clear with this. I try to be as neutral as possible. I try to give you my neutral opinion as possible, but then always understand, just like every human out there, I have my own interests. I need to keep the company's interests in mind. And obviously talking about a somewhat competitor is always a bit tricky in this case. So, but again, I try my best to stay as neutral as possible. First of all, let's kind of quickly set the stage. The CFTC came out with a 74-page suit against Binance. The key thing to understand here, the CFTC, Commodity Futures Commission for the US, is different to the SEC, which cares about securities. Why is this relevant? Well, commodities tend to be traded all around the world, where securities tend to be traded only on an individual marketplace. Easy example, oil gets traded on all kinds of markets all around the world. And this has implications, and you will see those implications. Whereas a security, let's say an Apple share, is only traded in New York. That's it. So that you will see, that's going to have significant impact. My goodness, what's going on with the sun? That's going to have a significant impact. Also key, this is not only involving Binance US. This involves Binance Global or Holding. It involves CC, the CEO and co-founder of Binance directly, and it involves Samuel Lim, who is the compliance officer. This is also going to be important from a game theoretical standpoint, and you will see this in a second. Now, all the kind of, and you can, this got discussed by lawyers and by experts and so on, but I think all the kind of claims in that are, you can summarize them probably in like 3 different categories. One is those categories where it's alleged that Binance is simply bypassing regulation, is doing fraudulent stuff, and they talk about how they are helping money laundering, helping with terrorist groups like the Hamas, and so on. And I don't think that part of the lawsuit is, for most crypto people, something that would surprise them. I don't think anyone here sits and says, oh, Binance, the largest crypto platform out there, 100% clean. I don't think anyone sits there like this, right? Again, I keep in mind, I don't want, at no point do I want to speak bad about a competitor here. I just don't see it, right? And look, we have seen so many of these allegations. Here's a flip side to that, right? I also don't think the crypto community cares about this, right? I think a lot of the crypto community actually feels that a lot of this borderline activity, while not being by the law, they feel like, look, the government, the banks, they are cutting down way too much anyways, so who cares about this stuff, right? Who cares? Like, it's a net positive, who cares? Fair. So this is part of it, right? The second big part is that services were offered that would need licensing, right? So I think that's the second large group. So one is clearly illegal activity, money laundering. They have chat transcripts. It seems that officers knew about this in the company and just closed their eyes. So that is like a global kind of issue. The other one is a very US-centric issue, which is any kind of leverage trading, any kind of derivatives, futures, and so on, right? It's a very US-specific one. And the reason I'm pointing all those out is because I do believe that this is going to have very different consequences as well. And also from a defense standpoint, it's going to be a bit strategic, in my opinion. That second one with the licensing, again, I think actually that's the one that the community cares the least about. They're probably even going to be very opposed to that, right? Where they're like, look, you're the regulator, you're not trying to save me, you're trying to save your friends, the banks, you're just trying to stay in control, leave me alone, I know what I'm doing, just why are you even getting in the crosshairs there, and so on, right? So I think that's that second part. Maybe you can identify with that. I think a lot of people, especially in the crypto space, are pro-freedom. On that first part with helping with money laundering, helping with illegal activity, you're going to have a bit of a split opinion probably. Some will be more on the libertarian side and just say, who cares? Some are a bit more on the regulatory side and says, no, this is not good. But I think a lot of people in the crypto community, especially when it comes to the licensing scheme for the US, many people will be more angry on that. And then there's a third part, and that's a part that some people have always alleged. But so I think that part with the licensing, I think everyone knew about that and everyone was kind of okay with that. Obviously the regulator wasn't, but I think from Binance's standpoint, it was more of a business kind of risk. That third part is, and that's relatively new, especially because it's so specific, that Binance had these trading accounts, they like the CFTC quantifies it at 200, that trades against the customer. There's market makers who make money off that. There seems to have been evidence that CC is manipulating the markets, and that is basically a third huge group. Because I think that is something that most of the people are not so much aware of, or we're not aware of. Again, these are claims, right? Not guilty till proven different. So very key to understand. But so I think that's that third large group. And obviously that's the one that also kind of polarizes in the community. Now you have the Binance fans who are really supportive and they're like, hey, it's just another part of this choke point, crypto choke point project. So the US just wants to clamp down on crypto. And of course, it appears that way. I want to be very clear. But then on the other hand, I mean, it's the same with FTX. People blame CC that FTX went bankrupt. And that's exactly wrong. The issue is that FTX did shady stuff. And it's the same here, right? It's exactly the same. I mean, sure, let's say the US was trying to do some choke and try to kind of clamp down on stuff. Well, if everyone were playing by the rules, right, and granted, I mean, the rules are really not clear and it's really questionable, right? But if everyone would just play super safe, there wouldn't be much to clamp down on. It would just be fine, right? So, like, there's a flip side to that. And again, I don't want to defend the US's action at all. I just want to put some perspective on that. So the first question, and I mean, there's one interesting side to that, and that one interesting side is the CFTC made it very clear that Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, stable coins are commodities. Quite interesting. Obviously, the Ethereum holders were celebrating this. This was a very interesting point, and the CFTC made this very clear. Now, why is this relevant that it's the CFTC here and not the SEC? And this is an interesting question when it comes to jurisdiction. Yes, both authorities have, both regulators have authority only over the US. However, there's a big difference. The CFTC's reach actually is almost global because commodities get traded all around the world. If they feel that there is some issue with some company, they can enforce with pretty much all the other companies that they work with to stop working with that entity. And that is why many people right now are saying that the CFTC going after Binance is a death blow to Binance. I have a lawyer friend here in Singapore who basically predicted to me, he said, Binance will be either non-existent or completely irrelevant by the end of the year. And this sounds absolutely crazy, right? So my first reaction was like, bullshit. Like, it's the largest exchange right now. It has by far the largest volume, has the most amount of users. How is this possible that it becomes pretty much irrelevant or non-existent? And again, I just want to make that case the way it was explained to me. I'm definitely not the expert to understand this well enough to say yes or no to that. And I'm not sure anyone is the expert, but he says, and I mean, look, this makes sense to me. He says, from one day to another, the CFTC is going to send out this memo to every company that works with the CFTC, and these are thousands worldwide, right? Large companies. And they're going to say, you're not allowed to have any business relationship with Binance or any of their subsidiaries. This obviously applies to banks. This applies to any kind of payment rails. This applies to anyone. In theory, also any kind of hosting platform, right? So AWS or whoever. Now, I'm not sure, maybe Binance is hosting everything on their own. Could be. But just imagine this, right? So it can go so quickly downhill. And I mean, with quickly, I'm talking about this can happen in weeks. Now, do I believe this is going to happen within weeks? No, because also the CFTC is not going to have that interest in harming individuals, right? And if they would shut this entire platform down now within days, well, people would get stuck with their funds there, and they also don't want to have that. So they would probably want to have a bit more of an orderly kind of unwinding of everything. And so this is a bit of the kind of key thing here. So kind of explaining all this, do I believe there's any kind of crypto choke, like whatever, choke point 2.0? Yes and no, right? I definitely think the US is cracking down. We see this globally. G7, G20 mentioned they want to crack down on crypto. This is not unexpected. At the beginning of this year, I made this video where I talked about the three kind of regulatory kind of consequences, right? I talked about Silvergate, went down. I didn't see Silicon Valley, and I didn't see the Signature Bank. I talked about Genesis, Grayscale, DCG. That's going to happen in May. Like, there's going to be a major focus point on this entire thing in May. And I talked about Binance. All three for different reasons, right? Genesis because it's bankrupt, Silvergate just because of the risk tolerance, and Binance because of the regulatory issues. So different reasons. But at the end, I said they're all going to have some big impact this year. So how is this going to play out, and what does this mean for crypto? And that has to do with how it's going to play out. The most likely, so if Binance does nothing, I think the CFTC is simply going to win this, like straightforward, and that's it. Like, I don't think that Binance can do this. I think the opposite way of actually trying to fight this is going to be way too risky for Binance, because the CFTC tends to be like the sharpshooter, has everything in mind, understands everything. They're going to know exactly how to kind of win this, right? And they seem to have a lot of evidence. So very difficult. Also, Binance is not going to want to open all their books, doesn't want to be completely transparent. I don't think that's in their interest. The key thing is to find a settlement. And this is where it's so interesting about those three large groups, plus that like three large groups of claims, right? Obviously the pure like international money laundering and so on claims, then the very licensing regulatory claims, and then those trading against the users, plus singling everyone out. That's also interesting from a game theoretical standpoint, or like a prisoner's dilemma. They're basically going against the individuals plus the companies, and they play each other. So it's going to be interesting if one of them kind of breaks and, I know, hands everyone else in. So the question here really is speed of settlement and how dramatic this is. I see some people who are like, who cares? Like, okay, let Binance pay a couple of million and we're all good. And that's the wrong letter. It's not M, it's B. The question is Binance having to pay more than 10 billion or less than 10 billion? Like, that's the number probably I would be looking at, right? That's the ballpark. So I do think Binance is going to be winning this if they only have to pay like 2-3 billion. And I think they're going to be losing this if they have to pay more than 10 billion. The question is, how does Binance have this kind of money? In what form is this? If this is in crypto and they have to pay $6 billion in fines, well, how are they going to get those $6 billion, right? Are they going to have to sell Bitcoin and Ethereum? How do they get it? Like, what's going to happen there? In general, to me, this is, a big blow for crypto. I see a lot of the specific groups, especially the crypto hardliners, going and celebrating this and being like, oh yeah, the Coinbase, one of the centralized platforms, Binance, one of the centralized platforms going down, is super bullish. I'm like, how is this bullish? This is super bearish. We have the largest players, the largest on-ramps, who have probably onboarded 95% of the customers. They're not there anymore. So these rails have to be built by someone else. And if they're not going to get rebuilt, then, I mean, we're just going to be super slow. So I definitely think that's negative for crypto right now. That doesn't mean that it's negative for the crypto price right now. It just means this is not bullish, right? I want to be very clear. And yeah, it's going to be a bit more on the cautious side. So for sure, something to really keep a close eye on. I see some people who kind of make this a nothing burger, and I think that's exactly the wrong approach here. This is very, very structured, very specific, and obviously also question, what does this mean for BNB? If you're a BNB holder, if you are on the Binance Smart Chain, people always like the Binance Smart Chain is not decentralized. Obviously, that's going to be where the big question now comes in, right? And where it's actually going to get tested. So, yeah, quite a tricky scenario, to be honest. So, yeah, these are a bit of my thoughts on all this. Let me know what you think. Do you think that Binance issue is going to be a big issue now? Do you think that's going to be, do you think that's just going to be waved off? It doesn't really matter. How do you see all that? Like I mentioned, I think I think most people still struggle in understanding how big of an impact that is. So, yeah. By the way, Fabio, our head of community at Cake, and myself did a long format discussion yesterday during the Twitter space. So if you want, have a look there. And yeah, then you can follow this in a bit of a longer format. With this, I hope we have a bit of a calmer week at some point, and a bit of a calmer rest of the week. So have a good one in the meantime. Stay safe, stay healthy. All the best for now, and see you next time. Thank you so much. Yours truly, Julian. Bye-bye.